Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine and this is episode 157, the RAF Comforts Committee.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright. I need a drink, I need a friend, I need your help.
Hello and welcome to episode 157 of the Shiny Bees podcast. Today is Friday, the 18th of September. I am Jo, I'm your host, and back again today for another episode of the show. If you're a new listener, welcome. I hope you will enjoy today's show. And if you're a returning listener, as always, I thank you every time, and that's because I'm grateful every time that you've come back to hang out with me again. So it's been a little bit busy around Shiny headquarters, so that's why you've not had an episode from me for a couple of weeks. Basically, it all kicked off. And we were down to Sussex. We found a school, we found another school, we bought a house. We lost a school, we lost another school, and then we had to pull out of buying the house. All in about 2 weeks. So yeah, that was a little bit emotional. And then obviously came back up north and had to kind of repeat the soul destroying painful process yet again. And yeah, it was really painful and soul destroying. I'm not going to burden you with the finer details of that, other than to say, yeah, sometimes I wonder why people even work in education, literally. But there'll be some other stuff that I will bring out in the next few episodes that I've been inspired to undertake as a result of this hideous experience, and obviously super sad about not being sorted and moving to a new house that we got a great deal on, but we are where we are, friends. So I'm back in the north. Luckily it's been sunny for a week, and we think, fingers crossed, we've found the perfect educational establishment for the children to attend, and it seems to be going really well so far. So I'm hoping that all of that pain was worth it, and actually we've ended up finding the perfect place just 10 minutes away that we never really knew existed. Fingers crossed. So hopefully that should be fine. So they're very happy now they're back. They've got some friends and got some kind of normality, although it's just been announced that we're going to get locked down again in Lancashire, and at this time I am involved in that, so that's a little bit disappointing, I have to say. But whatever, we make the best of it and we will just crack on like we have before. I know some of you have sent me messages from various locked down areas of the world, and some of you indeed are lockdown listeners and you found us as a result of lockdown. So that's good, right? There's got to be some good stuff that comes out of it. And luckily for me, I've got a massive pile of books next to my bed. I'm pretty sure I can occupy myself with various projects and reading, and I'm still painting that flipping fence. So, I'll find something to do. But yeah, in the meantime, I have been doing a little bit of tidying out and trying to scrape out some more space in my current house. To do the stuff I want to do, and I went through some stash. I got rid of some stash. There's still some stuff on at Shiny, I think it's Shiny D Stash on Instagram, but I got rid of a load of stash to lovely new good homes, which is brilliant. But during the course of that, I found a knitting bag that my friend Gingini had made for me a few years ago. I think I was even in Wales when that happened, so it was definitely a lot of time ago. And on that bag, I found a badge that I'd forgotten I had bought from the RAF Comforts Committee. And there's been a lot of stuff on my timeline. Obviously, I'm ex-RAF, we're an RAF family, so there's been a lot of stuff on my timelines this week about the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, because that's Battle of Britain Day is 15th of September. So between that and the badge, I was inspired to do a little bit of research about the RAF Comforts Committee and what they did, basically, because I've got this badge. Now, you can buy the badges on eBay and various antique outlets, or you might know someone that has one, or maybe you've acquired one at some stage like I did, and there was a whole kind of storyline behind that. So I thought I would do a little bit of research on it, and in fact, it was quite funny, actually. Some funny tongue-in-cheek pictures and things to direct you to. So I thought you would enjoy that. So get your brew, get your knitting, and we will crack on with the show. So, as I said, today's episode is about the RAF Comforts Committee. And the Royal Air Force Comforts Committee was formed by the Air Council in October 1939 to determine the type and quantities of knitted comforts required for the RAF, as well as arrange for their collection, storage and distribution through their depots. And I quite like the idea of this like knitted comforts thing. Apparently the uniforms were pretty rubbish. They weren't particularly warm. They did the basic job, but essentially it was like, again, not that different from now, to be honest, a bit of a half-assed job for fighting wars. So you need some like decent stuff, Gucci kit, as we call it, that you make or buy yourself. So in an effort to kit the troops out appropriately, local knitting parties or groups were organised mainly by the Women's Institute and the Women's Voluntary Service, according to guidance issued by the committee. And anyone who could knit was basically roped into these knitting parties, and that included men, because at that point it was very commonplace that men were competent knitters as well. And as we know, we've got a few competent knitters, male knitters in the Shiny Bees crew, not least Neil, who's in Australia, who's just finished a Gansey in like dark blue, navy blue wool that he's designed and knitted himself. It's really cool. You can check that out. He's got some pictures on his Insta, which is Salt Horse. At Salt Horse, he's knitted one for his son. It's really cool. It's all personalised. Ganseys is probably another subject we could talk about at some stage later down the line. But basically, the groups that were knitting all of these extra comforts for the airmen in the RAF were registered with the Comforts Committee, and that meant that they could get supplies of free wool and badges and certificates basically for achieving stuff. So they would write to the Comforts Committee and they would be sent amounts of wool. It was in Berkeley Square. I'd call it Berkeley Square because there's a pub in Wigan called Berkeley Square. So I call it Berkeley Square, but I think it would be technically Berkeley Square. And tangent. And basically they would send off, they'd be part of these groups, they would send off for some wool and they'd be sent like 2 pounds of wool, and they would knit whatever garment or comfort they were knitting, and then they would send it back again, and that would be exchanged for more wool. And ideally, if they could pay for the wool, that was great, but if they couldn't pay for the wool, they were given it for free in return for their skill. And if you could contribute some money towards the wool, then again, that would allow for people who had the skills but not necessarily the spare cash to be able to buy the wool to then donate their time and money to the war effort. As the war drew to a close in 1945, the knitted comforts were also made for needy children in the liberated countries and distributed by the Red Cross. So they were quite busy. And by April 1943, there were between 6,000 and 7,000 of these knitting party groups. And the main forms of knitted RAF comforts were mittens, pullovers, preferably with polo necks, quite good for flying because obviously none of the aircraft were heated. They were very, very cold to fly in. And obviously these jumpers made out of proper woolly wool were quite often good waterproof or repelling moisture and also keeping you warm as well. There was also balaclavas, again, to keep you warm, and gumboot stockings, which were made of oiled wool. I bet that was a treat to knit with. Now, the official colour for all of this knitwear was a grey blue, which we probably know as, or you will know as Prussian blue. And I think the story goes that the reason it was Prussian blue was because when they actually formed the RAF, kind of in the interwar years, they bought a lot of like excess uniform from the Germans, and that's how we ended up with the Prussian blue uniform. But by 1941, there was a shortage of wool, and as it was required in ever increasing quantities to, clothe all of the personnel. So the wool the comforts began to be knitted in more shades than just the approved uniform shades. So some of them were other kind of colours of blue, sometimes other colours altogether. The RAF had issued a standard book. We love an SOP in the RAF, containing instructions for knitting parties with approved patterns. So at least, they were still kind of uniform, or certainly that was the intention initially. Now, the badge, which is the thing that kind of started this whole research off, was issued by the RAF Comforts Committee. Everybody loves a badge, don't they? And it was given free to each registered local knitting party, but only the first badge. So normally the leader of the party got the first badge, and then everybody else could apply for one after they'd done a certain amount of work. So it had to be at least 100 hours of work before you could apply for a badge, and then you had to buy it, and the badges were $1 each. But you got a certificate and a letter from the Air Marshal. So, very exciting. Now, apparently, apart from the badge, everyone does it for a badge, right? Everyone loves a badge. But the individual's reward was the satisfaction of knowing the men's appreciation. How terribly British. So yeah, I got a lot of that information from talesfromthesupply.depot.blog, and there's some pictures on there as well. I'll put links to all of these in the show notes, and a lot of that itself came from Flickr, actually, a guy on Flickr. I was looking for some stuff from the Imperial War Museum and things like that, but there doesn't seem to be that much, and a lot of it isn't digitised, which is a bit of a shame. It's listed in their archives and their kind of catalogue, but there's no digital prints of it, because I would have quite liked to have been able to obviously send you to a place you can find this pamphlet. Luckily, I do know someone who has one, so I might be able to get to that, or at least find out somewhere I can send you to as well. So I did a little bit more research and a bit more looking around, and I found this that made me smile a little bit from the RAF Comforts Scotland Southern area. And it says, notes for knitters. As all service wool now being issued is wheeling, and I had to Google wheeling because I didn't know what that meant, and apparently that means a coarse, thick type of worsted yarn originating from uncombed wool spun on the big wheel. We advise our knitters to use our patterns unless they have special patterns suited to this wool. So none of this Googling your own substitutions here. There was no yarnsub.com in those days. They will note that our patterns have been planned with a view to economy of wool. And this was something I talked about when I was discussing Susan Crawford's stitching time patterns before, when I was reading about all of that, sort of the way that fashions have changed according to the availability of materials that she talks about in A Stitch in Time too. And again, we're seeing it, obviously it was the same period, but we're seeing it again here where they're using very workhorse yarns and adapting to the situation that they find themselves in and producing patterns just for the particular types of wool that are available. So it says, going back to the notes for knitters, it says socks. As service laundries are becoming increasingly unsatisfactory, we recommend number 9 needles, except in the case of loose knitters who might use number 10. Feet should not be less than 11 inches in length. Which cracked me up fully. Service laundries in general, increasingly unsatisfactory. Why is that? Have they been bombed to smithereens? Are they just not that good at washing clothes anymore? Who knows? But it's the feet should not be less than 11 inches in length. Is that in the sock? Is that in the knitter? Is that in the laundry operator? Who knows? But yes, apparently. So yeah, really cool, really interesting. I also found a company that was, unfortunately at the moment you can't get these, which is a little bit sad. I don't know if that is COVID related or whether it's demand related or what, but basically Aero Leather Clothing. who are like a specialist uniform supplier, and they were making modern, like new versions of the polo neck jumpers for flying in, but using very similar wool, using the original patterns, and they were all hand knitted in Scotland to the actual design of the 1940s polo neck flying jumper, which is cool, but they're sold out. So they've got some machine knitted versions, but you could actually buy one hand knitted in Scotland using the same wool to the same pattern, which I think is really cool. Like, yeah, obviously I could knit my own if I had a pattern, but I just think it's good that you could just still buy this, and it's still out there. So I did a little bit more research, and it turns out, and we shouldn't be surprised by this, that in her extensive vintage pattern collection, Susan Crawford's actually got the knitting for the RAF pamphlet. And she's written about it in her blog. It was quite a long time ago. It's like 2012 when she wrote about it. But on that blog, there are some pictures, some very tongue-in-cheek pictures that have come out of the actual pamphlet, which I found really funny. It was just all a little bit Mrs. type, very stereotypical, but actually quite funny illustrations to go along with the pamphlet. So yeah, quite interesting. What turned out to be a little bit of a rabbit hole of research on historical knitting, but I also find there actually isn't that much information online about it, and it would appear, as I started to delve more into it, that there were some of these knitting parties actually created their own little pin badges. I don't know whether the official ones were a bit too expensive or what, but I found a couple online. One was for Leeds, one was for Nottingham, and had created their own pin badge for the particular knitting group or knitting party, which is pretty cool. I haven't found any for Lancashire, sadly, or else I'd have been all over that. I'd have been, yeah, definitely, I'm having one of those. But it's just interesting how that kind of developed into its own sort of thing as well. When they sent back these items that they had knitted, there was a little label to go along with it where they could write their address and things so that the recipient of the garment could write back to them and say thank you very much for my jumper or my gumboot socks or indeed my balaclava, which is cool. I wonder how many people did that. And I'm not sure if it's one of those things that people haven't researched that much, or whether it's my Google terms, or whether all this information is maybe lying around in local history museums or what. I'm not sure. I'll have a chat to Susan and find out, because I'm sure she will know. But I didn't really find a lot more on it than that, other than that there were also similar groups for things like the Merchant Navy, the Royal Navy, and for the Army as well. So yeah, a little bit different, something a bit, trivia, I guess. So yeah, I'm enjoying my RAF Comforts Committee little badge, and I just wonder why they don't still do it. I'd be like all over that. It'd take me forever, but I would definitely knit at least one jumper for a pilot. But I say that, and I've got a pilot and I've never knitted him a jumper. But there we go. Anyway, so let me know if you have knitted any of these things, or you've seen any. Quite often when you go to, because obviously we're a military family, every time we go somewhere, we go to the War Museum, where it's quite common to find like sock knitting machines or sock patterns or similar things to this on display in the museums or anywhere else. But if you've got any good links to share or any good stories to go along with that, particularly if you are not in the UK and you are somewhere else, then let me know. It'd be really cool to research some more of that just for my own curiosity. And obviously, if there's any cool stories, I can share them with you. So that's all I'm going to chat about this week. I've got a little bit of a sore throat starting. Obviously, the kids have brought home the beginning of their term, at least, germs and lurgy from school. It's not COVID, it's just a sore throat. But obviously, I don't want to kick the backside out of it and make it worse before it gets better. So that's all we've got time for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show and hanging around with us, or me rather, and the rest of us. Today. Just a quick notice for all of you. If you want to join us, our new community is active on Mighty Networks. We've got quite a few people over there now. The Facebook group is going to be closing. this Sunday, and we are waving goodbye to Zuck and saying hello to a group that's just about knitting, that is a chronological timeline, that's just got nice people in it, that's not got any adverts, and is really quite good fun, and really enjoying it at the moment. I haven't even had chance to, obviously from everything that's gone on, you got the TLDR version. It's been really, really flipping stressful, and I've not really been sleeping, and I've been very, very preoccupied. And there's still been quite a lot of chat in there, so I'm looking forward to now. Hopefully everything has kind of calmed down and everything seems a little bit more settled, to actually spending quite a bit more time in there and sharing some cool stuff and things that I've found, and looking at ways that we can get together virtually, because obviously we're about to get locked up again in most of the north. So yeah, you can find that. If you're in the Facebook group, there are at least 2 links directly into the Mighty Network. It's called Shiny Bees Podcast, Knitting Podcast Club. If you just Google it on, not Google it, search it on Mighty Networks. And if you go to shinybees.com/community, it will automatically link you there, and you can request to join, and then I will let you in and then say hello to you, and you can say hello to everyone else. And it's not going to be awesome. It's already awesome. It's going to be even awesomer. I'm going to be doing some knit alongs. I'm excited for all the cool stuff we can do in there. It just feels like a nice place on the internet that's just, everyone's feels quite cheerful and positive and upbeat. And that's what we all need more of, I think. So get yourselves over there, shinybees.com/community. And that's where I will be, along with everyone else. So that is definitely it now. Have a lovely week. Happy crafting. And I will speak to you all again soon. Cheers. You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found at our website, shinybees.com/157. Please do go ahead and join us in our community online. You can find that at shinybees.com/community.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright. I need a drink.